Hi, I'm Michelle Shingler, the editor-in-chief of Foreword Reviews, and you're tuning into Petit Foreword, our bite-sized interviews with indie authors. Today we're speaking with Jessie Van Eerden, whose latest book, Yoke Feather, releases on November 19th. It's a glittering essay collection and a work of exquisite longing marked by keen reflections on biblical tales. Jessie, thank you for taking the time to speak with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Michelle.
So throughout the book, you retell the stories of biblical women, setting them in the context of contemporary Appalachia. Which of these women's stories is most personally meaningful to you?
Well, I would say probably the Mary and Martha story. It's one that indulges in a great deal of fiction in the tale, but in brief, it's a story of sisters and those who kind of grow up with that narrative. It's usually a pedagogical story of be more like Mary, who is kind of contemplative um, and thoughtful, instead of like Martha, who is always working and always kind of serving. And so I kind of grew up with those as kind of almost like moralizing characters. And so I was most drawn to sort of blowing up that story and trying to figure out and imagine my way into sort of the inner life of those sisters. It's probably the most meaningful to me.
So you write both fiction and nonfiction. You have several beautiful novels, and they both share, all of your work shares visions and images in common. Can you speak to the differing complications of writing in those two modes?
Yeah, I mean, I'm mainly essay and novel, so short form and long form. I don't write long form memoir and I don't write short form short stories so much. So part of the difference is, of course, length and immersion. I think essays for me are places to exercise obsession, and whether it's sort of word obsession or image obsession or a question, and to excavate and kind of bring together unlike strands that can work in a very small space. A novel is immersive, so it takes not only an extended amount of imaginative time, but also a lot of time in my life.
Yeah.
So it's better served when I have a lot more free time and open space, maybe not as full of a teaching load.
Yeah. At the beginning of your book, you're venturing into online dating and finding it very unnatural. What do you think the algorithms and programmers miss about how true human connections form?
Well, let me first start off by saying I think many people meet with online apps and and dating life is alive and well. I think my experience of dating online uh, it was kind of similar to other algorithmic platforms. So the other day I was looking at sleeper sofas, and there on Instagram, lo and behold, 6 or 7 ads for sleeper sofas. So it's the anticipation of what you're already looking for.
Yeah.
And so there's something to me that was super interesting of looking at, like, what is the nature of desire within this platform, that it kind of caters to the ins and outs of desire. And I think mainly the thing that was kind of exciting to me to think about was often we don't know what the deeper longing is for. And I think dating platforms tend to be like, what is your checklist? And I think when we pursue our deeper longings through a checklist, we're probably missing something. There's probably some sort of surprise or strangeness that we're not going to necessarily be exposed to unless it's kind of by accident. So I wanted to explore that in that particular essay. What is it that we don't know we even longed for, and when we find it, what does that taste like? What is that experience like?
For sure. It's such a funny and fabulous essay. I really enjoyed that.
Thank you for saying it's funny. I don't do comedy very often. It helped me survive that experience.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I can imagine. You also have these beautiful prayers all throughout your book. There are prayers for people, for communities, and for the world. Which of these do you think speaks most keenly to the concerns and challenges of the present moment? And if you wouldn't mind sharing a line, would you mind sharing a line?
Yeah, sure. when I was thinking about this question, I was thinking about there are lots of more overt kind of versions of this is what prayer might be. But there was one passage in the Mary and Martha essay that I mentioned earlier that maybe means a lot to me in this particular season where a lot of us are feeling a little bit at sea. And it's a lot of the book looks at blessing, and there's kind of language around blessing being ineffectual or sort of um, operates as prayers are not supposed to operate.
Mm.
And so this is when the fictitious foster daughter Maud that Mary and Martha adopt, her heart is broken and Mary is nowhere, even though that's who Maud wants. And there's this part where Martha comes in, and Martha believes in effectual prayer. She thinks prayer like a body folding around you. Martha, so clearly edged and skinned with nothing to spare, to Maud's great surprise, pulls back the corner of wool and lies down with Maud at her back. Martha folds her body like an awkward stiff reed, smelling of bread dough and parsley around the bereft girl. Martha becomes all eaves, all shelter. This is a way to pray, says Martha, matter of fact. Think of the results. Hell, if you have hypothermia, we spoon skin to skin. I keep your blood hot enough to flow through your heart. Also, if there's a grenade, I fold my body around it and take the force to blow apart my innards. I could save you. It's practical, really. So I was thinking about that line about prayer being, she becomes all eaves, all shelter, which is maybe one way we can behave with one another in these times.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. Thank you.
Thanks.
And you end your book with thoughts on how the world is only getting more complicated, but you evade despair by imagining how God sees us all in God's streams. What about that is a source of comfort for you?
That's a good question. I don't know if it's purely comfort. I think it's disturbing at the same time. I think that particular essay is really interested in the biblical imagination. So looking at the particular scripture of my yoke is easy, my burden is light, which are oppositional ideas. Like a yoke is heavy, a burden is heavy. So how does it counterpose to this kind of lightness? And so the whole essay is kind of exploring the way human obligation might work in a way that is beautiful, and that there is something about learning from sort of the yoked oxen that inspires Jesus's imagination. So it's a fictitious kind of imagining into what that teaching and what that maxim might mean. So I think what's maybe comforting to me about it is there's in the religious imagination, I think that we operate in as a culture and as humans is often really paltry and is moralizing and thin and offers no room for the imagination, which I think if we allow it, I think there can be something kind of more beautiful, even when things in the world are falling apart.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that answers your question well. That essay kind of baffles me still.
I loved re-immersing myself in it, so everyone should enjoy it. And we love your work so much. We've read all of your novels. We love your essay collections. So we're hungry for more. What are you working on next?
Well, thank you, and thank you for your thoughtful reviews. So right now I am back at work on another novel. I swore off novels after I finished Call It Horses because it was so immersive, but currently on sabbatical, so I thought I would just go into the deep end again. And it's a foster story, essentially. I think I was pretty inspired by the Mary and Martha narrative, and it's a young niece who's around 9, which is a really fun perspective just to kind of live in. I love that age child, and her mother dies, and they live adjacent to a monastery, so it's kind of monastic adjacent. But when her mother dies, she goes and lives with her uncle, who doesn't really even know that she exists. So it's kind of a meeting of their worlds. I think it's largely exploring what prayer might be, what disappointment looks like when you live inside it, and that there's still kind of this thriving space. But mostly it's also kind of a river book. The monastery is is right on the gorge of a river, and so there's some sort of experience of canoe and swimming and the hemlocks and the sycamores, and so I'm kind of living in that landscape a good bit right now.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah. Well, we'll look forward to that very much. And until then, for our viewers, your Yoke and Feather comes out on the 19th, so everyone be sure to get it. It's poetic, it's theologically astute, it's just a really beautiful collection. So we hope everyone goes out to get it. And Jessie, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today.
Sure. Thank you so much, Michelle.